Good afternoon to you all. So sorry for the technical challenges. Our meeting has delayed by about 6 minutes. We are sorry about that, 11 minutes, sorry. But you're very welcome. I can see my panelists all ready to go. I can see Professor Katuse, very welcome. Dr. Moses Gaza, welcome. Miss Monica Nyaga, very, very welcome. Sharon Cecil.
Hey, yes, I'm here. Hello.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to welcome you all. I'm sorry that we've eaten into our time, but I believe that we'll have some 50 or so minutes to just deliberate on the situation in Kenya. And I would like to first welcome you all. I can see people are joining the meeting. We have a good number. So yes, I'd like to introduce my panelists so that we can get going with the conversations as the rest join us. So first on my list is Professor Paul Katuse. Professor Paul Katuse is a professor of strategic management. I'm sorry, my panelists, I'll do my best to introduce you, but please, I'll give you some moments, some few minutes to just introduce yourself as we go on with the conversation. So Professor Paul Katuse is a professor of strategic management. He's a corporate consultant he's been a corporate consultant for nearly a decade, and he specializes in strategy and change management. He has consulted within the public and private sector in issues to do with strategy and globalization issues. Presently, the professor is keen on quality assurance, especially in issues in the institutions of higher education. Second on my list is Dr. Moses Gaza. Dr. Moses Gaza is a senior lecturer in the Technical University of Mombasa at the School of Business. He's also a researcher and consultant and specializes in the area of industrial economic in sub-Saharan Africa. Third on my list is Miss Monica Nyaga, who is a gender education and policy analyst. She's keen on championing for education, better education, works with young people in high school, in universities, just to make sure they get quality education. She holds a bachelor degree in social work and project management. Fourth on my list is Miss Sharon Cecil, who I believe is an undergraduate student at Moi University. She sits in the council at Moi University. She's an associate fellow and co-founder of EHEB, which is a social enterprise that empowers the less fortunate children in rural Kenya. So to my panelists, karibuni sana. I am so happy to be your moderator today. I look forward to a fruitful conversation, fruitful engagement, and I'm so excited to host you all here. So very quickly, I'll introduce our topic for today, the future models of higher education in Kenya. And basically, we'll be dealing with 3 questions. I hope I am all loud and clear. Please, if you can't get me, just let me know so that I can correct that. We'll be dealing with 3 questions today. 1 is, will learning institutions adjust to new teaching and learning methods, especially with the prevailing circumstances and the pandemic and whatnot? 2 is, what future model of higher education can the academia propose for Kenyan youth? I'm glad that we have 2 very distinguished guests of the academia, that is Professor Katuse and Dr. Ngoze, who can give us better insights in this. Then what is the role of technology and smart solutions in the new normal? I just want to point out that our panel is very dynamic. It has both the academia and student and specialists in the area of education and gender. So I believe that we'll enjoy these conversations. To our participants, please feel free to write your questions in the chat box. Feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to give your opinions, not just questions, your opinions, so that we can have a fruitful deliberation. So I'll want to start with Dr. Ngoze. This question, will learning institutions adjust to new teaching and learning methods? And here I would like you to give us insights on the pedagogy, the approaches to teaching in the learning institutions, and the platforms that we have, and what we need to change or what we need to embrace moving forward. So over to you, Dr. Ngozi.
Yeah, thank you very much, Clotilda. I think I've gotten your name very well. Now, we are in unprecedented time. And thank you have already introduced me. I don't need to go further into introduction, though I would like to say that my area of specialization is mostly in the business perspective, that is industrial economics, and to some extent entrepreneurial orientation. Though when this particular situation came in, that is the COVID-19, as an academia, we had to think ahead, because this were unprecedented time whereby we couldn't be able to think about how are we going to go on with academia. Now, looking at the academia in the university, we basically, whenever you talk about pedagogy, now we should be able to think about the methodology that we have been applying at the university. In most cases, most of the pedagogy that have been practiced, or methodology that have been practiced, have been basically the lecturer-centered. That is the lecture method. Now, when you look at it, going further to discuss about most of the models of academia, of disseminating academic at the university and higher institution, we discover that this means that we have to have face-to-face interaction with the students. But now, given that we have COVID-19, and we are talking about social distance, we are talking about the lockdown, we are talking about it affecting the academia sector. Now, how do we think about? Initially in Kenya, we have been depending on that lecture method. Now, sometimes it's all about the innovativeness of the lecturer. You can be able to institute what we call discussion groups. However, in the public university setup, we have got very big classes. Classes sometimes are even more than 100. Now, given that you're supposed to, to address and to be able to cover within 3 hours, so it becomes very difficult for you to have any other methodology of learning. So, given that we are going through this unprecedented time, we have to think about new ways of approaching. So in public university, this has come in a very big way. We usually say that, new models come in whenever there's any disruption. And the disruption that has come in is this COVID-19. However, I would like to say that this is an opportunity. We can be able to think of new models of how to disseminate academia. But however, these new ways of disseminating academia, what are the impact? We talk about costs that are related to these new models that are coming in. So I'll be able to address the other two models, given that before the COVID-19 came in, we were having what we call the face interaction. Sometimes in America, they call it augmented, whereby we have the learners going to the lecture hall, waiting for the lecture, or any discussion group that has to do with interaction. So other models that are coming, such as the virtual, talk about the so-called the hybrid, that now the Ministry of Education is insisting that we should be able to practice, that is face contact, when we are going to be through the COVID, post-COVID era, and virtual, we can be able to think about that. Thank you very much, Claudia.
Thank you, Dr. Ngozi. Those are very good insights that you brought about, especially in public universities where we have classes. I remember when I was doing my undergraduate degree, we had classes of over 200 or 300 pupils, students. So I am just thinking, I'm a bit worried of the future for COVID, because we can't suspend learning forever. There is a time that we'll get where we'll have to go back to pursuing our courses. So I just want to pass it over to Professor Katuse. You're very keen in quality assurance in the institutions of higher education. So what do you think, in line with our question, will learning institutions adjust to new teaching and learning methods? how possible is it? How feasible is it? And what do we really need to do to get there? So Professor Katuse, if you could kindly just give us insights on those questions.
Thank you, Clotilda and the other panelists. Well, as Moses has just said, change is happening. And in actual sense, the aspect which you wanted to hear about, that is the pedagogy, I would possibly put that into the second question. But I would want to actually just say strongly that change has been there. And this disruption, that is the COVID-19, in actual sense has just increased this given change, facilitated this change. And so now, as we talk about this given change, or whatever is happening generally, change we are saying is there. Challenges are there, which are also bringing about the need for change. And besides that, aspirations of organizations also are bringing the need for change. So three things: change, challenges, aspirations. Now, how or from which perspective? If we look at the two main stakeholders of the education system in Kenya, we got the public sector, we got the private sector. The public sector, that is the government, is looking for social change. Is it going to happen? Yes. Has COVID enhanced this need? Yes. What about the private sector? In actual sense, I think on today's paper or yesterday's paper, I try to keep tab with what's happening. They have accused TSC, I think it's on Twitter or on the newspaper, that teachers are just being paid for staying at home for free. Anyway, besides that, now, as we move on, when we talk about this change, we've moved from education 2.0, education 3.0, education 4.0, education 5.0. Now, what we are calling actually from the 4.0, that is the fourth industrial revolution, we are seeing now changes happening through use of smart technology, artificial intelligence, use of robotics, etc. Now, as I finish this, I possibly want to go back to the question. Two main aspects: learning and teaching, and adaptation. What are we adapting to? When you look at the learning, there are the learning processes. There are the expected learning outcomes. Is the learning student-centered? This is what is going to bring about change once we look into these three perspectives: processes, outcomes, and whether the learning is student-centered. Number two, teaching. What are the methodologies which we are using to teach, to deliver? Okay, is the teaching issue-centered or it is teacher-centered? So with that, I think it is very obvious that adaptation is going to happen, and we, as the participants in this industry, we have no option. We must adapt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Katuse. Those are very vibrant and real issues that you brought up, that the teaching should be student-centered. It should be able to deliver. And I believe that will really, it will answer to our second question when we'll further be talking about the future models of higher education. But at the moment, I just want to pass it over to Ms. Monica Nyaga. If you can hear me, she's one of my panelists and she's a gender and policy analyst. I want to pose this question to you. With this changes that are happening. And we're asking if learning institutions will adjust to new teaching and learning methods, the platforms that are being used. We are going virtual, the teaching methodologies. What issues do these pose to students, especially students that cannot afford Wi-Fi or cannot afford to follow their programs or their teachings or their courses online? So what issues do this present to the Kenyan youth, the normal mwananchi, that is struggling? Yes, they want to get education, but how do they really fit in these changes? So Miss Monica Nyaga, kindly, if you can hear me, if you can just give us insights on that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm very inspired by the insight from Professor Paul and Dr. Moses. As a stakeholder who supports scholarship and access to education, we are very worried, but at the same time, we are trying to look for solution in partnership with institutions of higher learning, how students who cannot access education, how they'll be supported during this time. To be honest, they already affected because they cannot afford, they don't afford school fees, they don't afford other basic things in to study or to be in high institutions of learning. That's why institutions like scholarship, like where I work at Shofco, maybe Wings to Fry and other institutions, we come on board. Now you find these students, some don't have laptops, some come from informal settlement where there's no Wi-Fi, some don't, they have smartphones, but they're not good smartphones which can be able to access some of the technologies which are coming on board. So I'm thinking moving forward, as Professor Katuse has mentioned, change has come, there are disruptions. So the institutions of higher learning, they need to tailor make the training, the curriculum, whatever they're going to do in line with the disruptions which are happening currently. Also, the job market, what's the market expecting? There are new trends. Right now, people are working from home. We are talking about different generations. We are Generation X, Generation Y, and now we are talking about the millennials. Is the curriculum, is the education offered addressing the challenges which millennials are facing in the job market? The other thing is the jobs of the future. We have seen there are so many layoffs, we have seen redundancies happening. So as we rethink the new models need to address such issues, because there are some courses, there are some how can I call them? There are some courses which will not be there in 5 years to come. So as a stakeholder who is financing education, who wants students to access education, I'm really asking, whatever I'm sponsoring a student to study in Moi University or in USIU or in Technical University of Mombasa, will it be relevant in the next 5 years? Those are the challenges which we are looking at, which we are thinking about, and which we are looking at if the university will address with the new models which are being proposed here.
Thank you very much, Monica. Those are very wonderful insights that you've given in terms of whatever the students, or rather the youths, are learning. Are they really answering to the prevalent challenges or the job market? So next in my panelist is Sharon Cecil, who I believe is an undergraduate student and sits in the Enactus Moi University Council. I just want to pass this question to you as a student. What do you think, what changes, what do you think will enable you to adapt to these changes? Putting in mind that not all students can afford laptops, not all students can afford Wi-Fi. So as a student, what do you think, when given to you, will facilitate you to be successful and achieve what you want in your course with the changes? So over to you, Sharon Cecil.
Okay, thank you so much, Clotilda. Just as Monica has said, with the challenges in these new models now that COVID has hit, clearly with the public institutions and the private ones, there's a gap in the way learners gain access to their courses. I believe with the private institutions, probably they are more conversant with some models, maybe the virtual models. But when it comes to the public institutions, there is, I'd say, a digital divide, you know. So when now COVID has hit, there is need for the public universities to actually step up. They were supposed to do so long ago, but I think now it's more of a wake-up call for them. And with doing this, there'll be so many challenges for the students because, again, not every child in public universities is capable. Some of them depend on loans. They have loans to facilitate them in school. So when you bring other aspects as virtual learning, that comes in place with various issues like internet, network, you know, issues like that, accessing online materials, which some students are not able to be in a position to do that. So I believe now that the government is prioritizing some of the things like in education or rather the health sector, we should be in a position to actually take advantage of these as institutions. Probably come up with models that will meet the needs of the 21st century learners. Probably they could try partner with service providers companies so as to offer free access network for education models so as to provide online education services. Because again, a challenge will come whereby these students, you'll have to gauge the importance of their education, because once it goes virtual, yet in the traditional methods, it wasn't actually student-based. You can imagine how worse it will get if it went virtual. So they need to come up with a model that is going to be student-based, just like Dr. said. Probably think of project-based models or problem-based models, which the lecturers can use, probably some teaching formats like audios or videos in a way that the students, even the one who is in a really interior place, can access, because the challenge here technically will just be the internet connections and the networks. Otherwise, students are willing to learn wherever they are. So coming up with a free access network for our education model, I think will be the best thing for students.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Those are very wonderful insights from you. So on to the second question. What future models of higher education can the academia propose for Kenyan youth? And this I would specifically want Dr. Ngoze and Professor Katuse to answer. I once had a conversation with my mentor, and she told me, she kept remarking how the Kenyan system of education is producing clerks. We are not producing innovative people. So how then do we make sure that this generation and the future generation fits in the global job market? Why do most of our students want to go and study abroad? And yet we have institutions of higher learning that have the necessary infrastructure that we need. So really, what models? Is it that we have to remodel our courses? Is it that we have to scrap off some courses and bring new ones? So how then do we have future models that can make sure that this generation and the future fits into the global market? So over to you, Dr. Ngoze.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. And I'm very happy that some of our students who are in this particular panel, they are alluding that there's a mismatch between what is happening in the university and the industrial sector. And that is very true. You remember we had the World Bank report that on academia in Kenya that was released early last year. And one of the consultants was the vice chancellor of one of the public university. So the report emphasized that there's a mismatch between what the industry wants and the academia. So given that, at this particular time, the COVID has come in and has really made us to think about, how do we approach the future? Because at the moment, we are having a situation whereby most of us, we are thinking how the future be. Paul has alluded to so many aspects that are coming in. There is a disruption that is even coming in the world. We are thinking about the fourth industrial generation revolution that is coming in a very big way. We are going to have robotics, the machine learning. So these particular aspects are coming in. So what does it mean in academia? We also have to think about the curriculum. We also have to think about the methodology that we are going to use. We also have to adapt to the kind of generation that we are having, the millennials. You know, this is a generation that is very, very fast. You know, it's far much ahead of, say, the generation that used to be there during, say, in Kenya in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s. This generation of millennial is very, very, you know, for instance, when it comes to talk about the technology, they are very, very fast with this particular technology. Now, having said that, you know, we must be able to think about the cost, the models that are going to come in future. We must think about the cost. We must also think about the accessibility. Think about when we introduce, for instance, the fourth generation industrial revolution, like the robotics, talk about Internet of Things, you know, talk about thinking about other technology advancement. You know, one of the things is that it has to do with internet penetration. Now, how far do we have the broadband? We are very happy that the government has introduced the new way, the balloon thing that you were told the day before yesterday, accessing internet in western part of Kenya, in Rift Valley. You know, that is good. However, think about the cost of these models. So coming to your question about the models that we are looking at, is that we still talk about traditional model, that's the lecture method. However, this lecture method, that is having to have face-to-face interaction, and probably the discussion groups, you know, with COVID, we must also think about it. Is it going to be sustainable? Are we going to have, given that the numbers of the numbers of those infected by COVID is going up in Kenya, are you going to envisage that? So I'm proposing 3 models that we can be able to explore based on the cost, and also based on the adaptation, and also based on accessibility. That the first model is the augmented model. Now, this augmented model is that face interaction, whereby we are going to have issues like having lectures, you know, that is the close contact, which is a traditional method. And then the second model is what we call the hybrid model, the one that nowadays Kenya we are talking about, the blended model. You know, we've had in most of the university, we have ODEL, the open distance e-learning method. That is, you know, we can have the virtual aspect, that's the electronic aspect. We can also be able to have the distance model aspect, whereby, you know, you prepare the modules and then you give it to the student. Now, this distance model has for some time been so successful in the private universities. You know, it's only the University of Nairobi have been running it, but not to a very big extent. We are having St. Paul's University talking about Mount Kenya University. You know, they have discovered they are very successful in that particular model. So this blended or hybrid model is the one that even the Ministry of Education at the moment, you know, the communication that came from the Ministry of Education indicating that the universities can be able to have the face learning, stipulated that we can be able to use this blended model. However, the blended model has also its disadvantage. You've heard the students indicating that we cannot be able to access the internet. You know, we cannot be able to afford it. So again, looking at it, is it going to be sustainable? And
yes, Doctor.
Then the last model,
okay.
The last model is the virtual model. So that going virtual model method altogether, you know, again, it has got its own disadvantage. For example, last week, Harvard University gave a communication that they are going to go virtual. However, there's also the state, that is the federal government. They are indicating that if it's going to go that, like now we also adopt it in Kenya, what will happen? It means that we are not going to have lecture halls. Students can be able to stay at home and have lectures. So again, that one is going to affect the economy. We are not going to have those who are depending, say, for instance, constructing lecture halls, providing services, they're going to be rendered jobless. So in a nutshell, when we are talking about these models, we should also be able to think, are they sustainable? The cost of these particular models, and also the adaptability to this particular model. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ngoze, on those insights. Professor Katuse, would you kindly talk more about the methodology side? Because I see Dr. has talked more about the models, I mean the platforms. So kindly, when you're answering that, I'd just like to take a question from the chat so that you can answer in line with that. Daniel Basigwa asks, how will quality assurance of the online learning and online exam be ensured by our universities? So kindly, Professor.
Now, when we talk about the models and quality assurance issues, I think I really cannot speak these. I can't give justice unless I go back to the models which my colleague Moses has already spoken about. Now, there are the models and there are the approaches. The approaches in this context are the pedagogies, which generally Moses has actually spoken about. The models, according to me, are three. We have the balanced curriculum model, whereby we try to actually bring the outside in. Can you bring the outside into the class and balance that, because it's curriculum balanced? Bring the inside out. What is inside the learner? Outside. Number two, there is the integral education model. The first one was balanced curriculum model, balancing the outside in and inside out. Number two is the integral education model, integral, whereby everything is integral. There is interconnectedness of factors. There is interdependent. Let's take, for example, I'm teaching quantitative methods in a classroom. Is there a component of emotional intelligence there? Is there an aspect of spiritual intelligence? We tend to much more deal with the cognitive, the head alone, the cognitive intelligence. And I think there is a problem there, because we educate the mind, but not the whole, but not the person. Number three, there is the basic human growth model. And the basic growth, or rather human growth model, has four aspects. Alignment. Am I aligned to another person? As I read, I don't want to turn this into a lecture hall. There is the so-called Ubuntu. I am there because you are there. When we talk about alignment, how aligned am I to my society, to the other person? What about freedom? How free am I to create? Okay? Those who are teaching entrepreneurship, and I thank God Moses is in the School of Business, which I also am part of that, they allow that to a certain extent. Academic freedom for us lecturers and freedom to create for the students. Or are we just limiting them by the use of that curriculum? Number three, there is the direction. What is my expected outcome? And by the way, this is where I also will always have a big problem with my students. They will come and tell you, no, professor, I'm actually expecting an A in your class. That is their direction, an A, not what they want to translate out of the learning. And then there is the last aspect of this basic human growth model, the values. Personal, societies. In the School of Business, Moses will always tell you that it's like in the ocean. As a fish, you either eat or you get eaten. We understand that the private practitioners in schools are saying that they are going to close 100 schools. What does that tell us? Anyway, now those are the three models. Now, when we go to the approaches on the pedagogies, that is now where the quality aspect comes in. And when we talk about quality, quality is in two aspects: what the government defines as quality and what we as a practitioners decide its quality on the basis of the expectations of the customer. The customer is you, the student, and also the environment to which we teach to. It is absurd because sometimes you find out that what we have been following in the country is what we call factory schooling. Input, process output. Output is the graduates. Input, we get students, they go into the normal rigors of a university, 4 years, they're out. And you find that somebody with a sociology degree gets employed by Barclays Bank as a cashier. Seriously? Now, what is that? Now, let's now talk about the approaches of the pedagogy. Well, we have been talking about STEM. That's the first one. Sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That has been emphasized a lot. In actual sense, allow me to tell you that July 1st, just a few weeks ago, there was an I think it's an invention, not an innovation, of a motorized mkokoteni at National Youth Service. I have no idea whether you guys are aware about that. Daktari was talking about cost. Now, if everybody has a motorized mkokoteni, the economy may actually not be affected. They may lose, of course, as Daktari is saying, in the sense that those who construct the mkokotenis, because they may not have the engines to put on the mkokotenis, but when you look into another aspect, they will save a lot. That mkokoteni can carry more, it will save more time, etc. So what are we doing about that? Locally, when we talk about STEM, which the universities which are specifically based on this, how much of a budget goes to them? Number two, project-based learning. Well, sometimes you realize that when we talk about, in fact, allow me to combine two pedagogies or two approaches: project-based learning and inquiry-based learning. How many universities do this? Whereby a student actually does not only go through the rigors of theory, but they solve a problem. From where I come from, we've been able to integrate. And integrating that means that we have had students learn by solving academic and industry problems through inquiry, giving back the solution to companies, and the company is taking it and possibly just tweaking it to an extent of 10%. If we ask ourselves, what is Enactus, the foundation about Enactus? Project-based, inquiry-based learning. How many universities have taken Enactus seriously? Because through these, I think students learn a lot. Let me give you another example. I think 5 years ago.
One more, Professor, because of time, just one more example.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, as part of Enactus, I participated in a project whereby my students actually went to our rural school, that's a boarding school, and converted biomass, which is found there in plenty, into energy. No, look at that. Then the last one is collaborative and multi-age. Collaborative. Now, it is the high time we ask ourselves, the internships and secondments, which we love having, School of Law secondments and the pupillage, internship for the School of Businesses, what has it resulted into? Do we have tangible results? These are questions we need to ask ourselves. I'm sorry, as a teacher, I can speak the whole day. So please pardon me for that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Professor Katuse. That was a very lively conversation, and there are comments from the participants that is very lively. Your passionometer. Someone just said, I love Dr. Katuse's passionometer. And thank you very much, Dr. Ngoze, Professor Katuse. Those are very, very lovely insights. So for the last question, I'd like to direct this to Ms. Monica Nyaga and Sharon Cecil. As young people, as innovative, practitioners, even as students or as a practitioner for Ms. Nyaga, what is the role of technology and smart solutions in the new normal? Borrowing from what Dr. Ngoze and Professor Katuse have given us in this conversation, what do you think is the role of technology and smart solutions in the new normal in in some of the previous conversations, some of the previous sessions we've had, we've seen students who have come up with, platforms, database where people can come and get internships, where people can come and get jobs. So in your opinion, I'll start with Sharon Cecil. In your opinion as a student, what is the role of technology and smart solutions in the new normal? Just 2 minutes, Sharon, because we don't have time.
Thank you, Clotilda, for that. I think being an Enactus member and having been in the club for, I think, 3 years, technology and the smart solutions plays a really, really critical role, especially for students in campus. I believe, for example, when I attended my yearly workshop, that's Young African Leadership Initiative, we had taken through design thinking, and it was a 4-week training. Then when I went back to campus, I felt like the lectures I was attending were actually adding no value to my life, because I felt the 4 weeks I had going through the design thinking at the leadership workshop, they actually gave me more insights than I would have gotten from my lecturers, So in as much as we go through these theoretical lectures in campus, most of them do not really prepare us for the jobs out there. And it is up to us to actually, lift our guards and come up with solutions to the problems in our society, using our own ways, using our own means of acquiring this knowledge. So technology and the smart solutions is a really critical and important thing in the lives of students, because it is through that they'll be able to actually create employment for themselves in the future, and employment for the 21st century that probably the private or public universities do not actually give the students.
Thank you, Sharon. You've mentioned something very important on design thinking, where you dig deeper and get to the real solution. What we've seen in Africa, in Kenya, is that even most organizations don't answer to the real problem. We answer to the surface, whatever is showing in the surface, and we don't get to the real problem. So that's a great insight on design thinking. So over to you, Professor Katuse, 1 minute, then we go to Ms. Monica Nyaga.
Sorry, I'm very happy for the aspect of design thinking. In actual sense, it should be introduced in curriculum, and not just in the curriculum, even as the faculty need to have an idea of what that, because we can actually have our students having that and we have no clue. Anyway, when we talk about the role of technology and tech smart, there are basically 3 I want to talk about. Okay. Number 1, solution to the problems. Number 2, it will bring efficiencies. Number 3, equality. Why? Because what is happening out there in the IV world should also be happening and will also be happening in Kenya. For example, now, students just sat for the exams the other day, and we have realized that we can do exams sometimes virtually. Use of, for example, responders, lockdown browsers, things which actually many people never thought about. Let's say, for example, by January this year, nobody knew what a responders is all about. What about today? It is a reality. So I think tech is here to stay, and students need to be encouraged, and not just the students, but also institutions of higher learning. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Professor. Ms. Monica Nyaga, if you can just jump into the conversation on what is the role of technology and smart solutions in 2 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you. Smart technology, it's going to bring a lot of efficiency, quality, and something I love about technology, and because I'm sure we are adopting technology in new models of learning, is students and lecturers, they're going to take responsibility, where they are going to, especially the student, they have to learn, they have to research, they have to go beyond waiting to just sit in lecture halls, wait for exams. It's so unfortunate. I think that's what I used to do in college. But I think now things are changing. To add on, it will encourage innovation, because tech is the future. For example, I've seen very many innovations which have come up to support e-learning for high school. Like we have an app called Zeraki. We have one called Shupafu. I've not seen any application or e-learning platform for universities. I'm sorry, maybe I've not done enough research, but I've not seen any, apart from one called Musomi. But I think the universities need to do something about it and encourage the students to go beyond and do more research about it. Then, like what Sharon has said, technology will be answering to so many challenges that we have. And to add on that is the issue of research. I remember some times back, I could not, there's a job I was qualified, but because I didn't have techie skills on doing research and using applications to do research, I didn't get that job. So I think technology and smart solution will even increase job opportunities for students, for youth, and also we are competing globally. So if you're here in Kenya and you want to get a job outside Kenya where technology is a bit advanced and you don't have that skills, you'll get a job. So I think technology and smart solutions will increase chances for employment. At the same time, will increase entrepreneurship ventures for students and will enhance quality of education and will respond to so many challenges.
Wow, thank you very much, Monica. Haven't we had a wonderful conversation? I feel so vibrant. I wish we had another hour, but unfortunately, we are just 3 minutes to the end of our time. And I just want to thank you very much, Professor Paul Katuse, Dr. Moses Gaza, Ms. Sharon Cecil, Ms. Monica Nyaga, and the other 28 participants that we've had. I've had such a wonderful time moderating this conversation. We haven't finished with the engagement for today. If you still have opinions or questions, you can still engage on Twitter and other platforms. Use the hashtag Enactus Kenya Expo. It's in the chat box. Kindly use that hashtag. Let's continue with the engagement. Let's continue, even post the 18th Expo, we can still continue because I believe we are practitioners, we are students, we can learn from each other. So I just want to thank you very much for your time, for lending in your expertise, for lending in your experiences, and wish you a lovely, lovely, lovely evening. Thank you so much. I've been your host, Clotilda Nalonja. I am a research and public policy analyst. I'm a student, pursuing my master's degree in research and public policy at the University of Nairobi. Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can leave at your pleasure.
You.
Thank you. You're welcome, Monica. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Clotilda. Now we close the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Shikwati. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.